You're standing on the edge of a cliff in Okinawa. The year is 1945. Below you, Japanese soldiers are advancing. Above you, American wounded are crying for help. And you're one man, one medic. No weapon, just bandages and morphine. This is the story of Desmond Doss, the soldier who saved 75 men without firing a single shot. What makes a hero? Is it the number of enemies killed, or is it something else entirely? Picture this. A skinny kid from Virginia, Seventh-day Adventist, refuses to touch a gun. His fellow soldiers mock him, call him coward, yellow belly. They try to get him discharged. Some even threaten to kill him themselves. But Desmond Doss has a secret that none of them understand yet. He believes in the sanctity of life, all life, even in the middle of humanity's greatest massacre. The drill sergeants scream in his face. They assign him the worst duties. Latrine cleaning at 2 a.m., kitchen patrol until his hands bleed. They want him to break. They want him to quit. But every morning, Doss wakes up, reads his Bible, and reports for duty. Because he knows something they don't. You can serve your country without taking a life. You can be brave without pulling a trigger. April 1945. The 77th Infantry Division approaches Okinawa. The Maida Escarpment, what the Americans call Hacksaw Ridge, rises 400 feet straight up, a sheer cliff face. At the top, Japanese bunkers, machine gun nests, mortars. It's a killing field designed to turn brave men into statistics. Doss looks up at that cliff. His unit will climb cargo nets to reach the top. Once they're up there, there's no cover, no protection, just open ground, and death waiting in every direction. His commanding officer pulls him aside. Doss, you don't have to go up there, you've done enough. But Desmond Doss isn't thinking about himself. He's thinking about the men who trained beside him, who finally accepted him, who now trust him with their lives. I'm going up, he says, and with those 3 words, one of the most extraordinary acts of heroism in military history begins. The first wave goes over the top at dawn. You hear the cargo nets creaking under the weight of fully equipped soldiers, hearts pounding, prayers whispered. Some men vomit from fear, others crack nervous jokes. Doss climbs with them, his medical bag bouncing against his hip. No rifle, no pistol, just faith and determination. Then hell arrives. The moment they crest the ridge, machine gun fire tears through the air. Men you were just talking to, gone. Bodies tumbling back down the cliff. The lucky ones die instantly. The unlucky ones scream for their mothers, their intestines spilling onto volcanic rock. This is when most medics would take cover, would save themselves first. But Desmond Doss does something that defies all logic, all training, all human instinct for self-preservation. He runs toward the wounded. Not away, toward. A soldier named Ralph Baker takes shrapnel to the legs. Can't move. Japanese soldiers are advancing. Everyone else retreats. But you see this skinny medic, the one they all called coward, sprinting through machine gun fire. He throws Baker over his shoulders, runs to the cliff edge. But how do you lower a wounded man down 400 feet of sheer rock? Doss remembers his childhood. Tying knots with his father, he fashions a rope litter, loops it around a tree stump, creates a primitive pulley system, and one by one he begins lowering wounded men down the cliff. Each trip takes precious minutes. Each trip exposes him to enemy fire. Just this one more, he prays. Lord, help me get just one more. The Japanese can see him clearly. This lone American without a weapon. They fire mortars, machine guns, rifles. But somehow, call it luck, call it divine intervention, they keep missing. Or maybe they're so stunned by his audacity that their aim wavers. Who knows? What matters is what happens next. Night falls. The American forces have retreated. The ridge belongs to the Japanese. And Desmond Doss? He's still up there, alone, surrounded by enemies, crawling through the darkness, feeling for wounded Americans with his hands. When he finds one, he drags them to the cliff, ties his rope, lowers them down, returns for another. Can you imagine that darkness? The smell of blood and gunpowder? The moans of dying men in languages you don't understand. The constant terror that the next shadow might be your last. By dawn, Doss has been awake for over 24 hours. His hands are raw from rope burns. His uniform is soaked with other men's blood. But he's still up there, still searching. The Japanese launch a counterattack. Grenades explode around him. He throws himself over wounded soldiers using his own body as a shield. One soldier, Harold Dumas, is shot in the leg. Can't walk. Japanese soldiers are literally stepping over them in the darkness. Doss covers Dumas with dead bodies, then lies, perfectly still beside him. For hours they play dead while enemy boots pass inches from their faces. When the Japanese finally move on, Doss carries Dumas 100 yards to the cliff and lowers him down. Just one more, Lord. Let me get just one more. You want to know what courage looks like? It's not the absence of fear. Doss was terrified. His whole body shook. He vomited from exhaustion and terror. But courage is being more afraid of letting others down than of dying yourself. Courage is choosing love over survival. The sun rises on May 5th. American forces prepare another assault. They expect to find Doss dead. Instead, they see him stumbling toward them, covered in blood and dirt, having worked through the entire night. The official count? 75 men saved. 75. Each one lowered down that cliff by hand. Each one a life, a future, a family that would exist because one conscientious objector refused to abandon his post. But how did those men feel? The ones who mocked him, who called him coward. Private Carl Bentley was one of them. Shot through the chest, certain he would die on that ridge. Then he sees Doss's face above him, the same face he spat on during training. Now that face is risking everything to save him. Bentley tries to speak, to apologize, but Doss just says, "Save your strength, soldier. We're getting you home." Can you imagine that kind of forgiveness? That kind of love? The military brass can't believe the reports. One unarmed medic saved 75 men? Impossible. They interview survivors separately. The stories match. Some soldiers weep as they describe watching Doss work. Others can't speak at all. They just shake, their heads in wonder. But Hacksaw Ridge was just the beginning. You think the story ends there? No. Desmond Doss had more to give, more lives to save. And the war. The war was far from over. May 21st, 1945. Night attack near Shuri. Machine gun nests pin down Doss's company. Men are dying in the open. No one can reach them. The lieutenant knows what he has to do. He turns to the one soldier he trusts above all others. "Doss, we need you out there." This time it's different. This time the Japanese know exactly who he is. The medic who won't die. They've put a price on his head. Snipers specifically target him. But Doss goes anyway, because that's what love does. Love doesn't calculate odds. Love acts. He reaches the first wounded man, then the second. By the time he gets to the third, a Japanese grenade lands at his feet. The explosion tears through his legs. 17 pieces of shrapnel, blood pouring from wounds. Most men would scream for a medic, but Doss is the medic. So what does he do? Give up? Call for help? He treats his own wounds, bandages his legs, then continues crawling to wounded soldiers for 5 hours. 5 hours. He drags himself through the dirt, giving morphine, applying tourniquets, whispering encouragement to dying men. When another medic finally reaches him, Doss refuses evacuation until all other wounded are taken. First, think about that level of selflessness. Your legs are shredded, you're losing blood, death is reaching for you, and your only thought is, who else needs help? They finally convince him to accept evacuation. Stretcher bearers carry him toward an aid station. Then Doss sees another wounded soldier by the path. He rolls off his stretcher. "Take him first," he says. "I can wait." The medics think he's delirious, but Doss insists. So they load the other soldier and leave Doss propped against a rock. That's when the sniper's bullet finds him. The bullet shatters his left arm. Compound fracture, bone protruding through skin. Doss is now wounded in 3 limbs, losing blood fast and completely alone. Japanese patrols are closing in. He can hear their voices. In that moment, most of us would pray for a quick death. But Desmond Doss, he prays for strength to crawl. Using his one good arm and pushing with his shattered legs, he drags himself 300 yards to an aid station. 300 yards. Try crawling across your living room with one arm. Now imagine doing it 100 times. With bullets snapping overhead, with broken bones grinding against each other, with blood loss making you dizzy and nauseous. When he finally reaches help, medics take one look and prepare him for death. The amount of blood loss alone should have killed him. But Doss has unfinished business. He refuses morphine because he wants to stay conscious. There's something he needs to say. "My Bible," he whispers. "I lost my Bible up there. You're dying and you're worried about a book?" But this wasn't just any book. This was the Bible his wife Dorothy gave him. The one he read every morning. The one that sustained him through mockery, through battles, through the longest night of his life on Hacksaw Ridge. That Bible was his armor when he refused to carry actual armor. Word spreads through the unit. Doss lost his Bible. The men who once tormented him for reading it now organize search parties. These battle-hardened soldiers, who've seen death in every form, risk their lives to find one small book in a battlefield. Because they finally understand what that book means. It's not just paper and ink. It's the source of the courage that saved their lives. They find it. Blood-stained, dirt-covered, but intact. When they bring it to Doss, tears stream down his face. Not from pain, from gratitude, from love, from the knowledge that these men, his brothers, finally understand who he really is. The journey home takes weeks. Shipped to Hawaii. Surgery to save his arm. Infection sets in. Doctors want to amputate. Doss refuses. More surgery. More infection. His weight drops to 90 pounds. Dorothy receives telegram after telegram. Condition critical. Prepare for worst. But she knows her husband. He's too stubborn to die. October 12th, 1945. President Harry Truman stands in the East Room of the White House. 13 soldiers wait to receive the Medal of Honor. 12 stand at attention. One sits in a wheelchair, still recovering from his wounds. That one is Desmond Doss. Can you imagine that moment? The kid everyone called a coward now wearing the nation's highest military honor. The conscientious objector who saved more lives than most soldiers took. As Truman places the medal around Doss's neck, he whispers something only Doss can hear. "You really are a wonderful young man." But medals don't erase memories. Every night Doss wakes up back on Hacksaw Ridge. He hears the screams, smells the blood, feels the rope burning through his hands. Dorothy holds him as he shakes, tells him he did enough, saved enough. But in his dreams, there's always one more soldier calling for help that he can't reach. This is the price of heroism no one talks about. The weight of the lives you couldn't save. Doss tries to return to normal life, becomes a shipwright, raises a family, but his body never fully recovers. The shrapnel works its way deeper. The old wounds ache constantly. In 1976, he loses a lung to tuberculosis, likely contracted from one of the soldiers he saved. He could have been bitter, could have asked, "Why me?" Instead, he says, "I'd do it all again." Think about that. Knowing the pain, the mockery, the nightmares, the permanent damage to his body, he'd do it all again. That's not just courage. That's love in its purest form. Every year, reunions bring together the men from Hacksaw Ridge. Grown men weep when they see Doss. Children and grandchildren shake his hand, knowing they exist because of his actions. One veteran, Terry Clymore, brings his entire family, 15 people who wouldn't exist if Doss hadn't lowered him down that cliff. "You didn't just save me," Clymore tells him. "You saved generations." But here's what's remarkable. Doss never sees himself as special. In every interview, every speech, he deflects credit. "I was just doing my duty." Anyone would have done the same. The real heroes didn't come home. This humility frustrates journalists. They want him to own his heroism. But Doss understands something they don't. True heroism doesn't seek recognition. It seeks only to serve. And that service doesn't end with the war. For decades, Doss quietly helps other veterans, drives them to appointments, sits with their families, listens to their nightmares without judgment. He becomes a counselor without title, a chaplain without ordination. When Vietnam veterans return to hatred and protests, Doss stands with them, understands their pain. After all, he knows what it's like to be hated for your beliefs. In 1987, Dorothy dies. Doss's anchor, his love, his reason for fighting so hard to come home, gone. Friends worry he'll give up. Instead, he doubles down on service, speaks at schools, visits hospitals. At age 70, he's still climbing stairs to reach bedridden veterans, even though his own legs barely work. Just one more, Lord, let me help, just one more. You see the pattern? The prayer never stopped. The mission never ended, because Desmond Doss understood something most of us miss. Life isn't about what you can take, it's about what you can give. And there's always more to give. In nursing homes, he sits with dying veterans. Men who've kept their war stories locked inside for 40 years finally speak. They tell him about the friends they lost, the orders they followed, the things they did to survive. Doss doesn't judge, doesn't preach, just holds their hands and says, "You did what you had to do. You came home." That's what matters. One veteran, Robert Pierce, hasn't spoken about the war since 1945. His family doesn't even know he served. But with Doss, the words pour out. Stories of a young man forced to kill, of nightmares that never ended. When he finishes, Pierce expects condemnation from this famous pacifist. Instead, Doss embraces him. "Brother," he says, "we all served in our own way. Your sacrifice was different than mine, but no less valid." Can you understand that kind of grace? From a man who refused to kill, offering complete acceptance to those who did? True heroism doesn't seek recognition. It seeks only to serve. And that service doesn't end with the war. For decades, Doss quietly helps other veterans, drives them to appointments, sits with their families, listens to their nightmares without judgment. He becomes a counselor without title, a chaplain without ordination. When Vietnam veterans return to hatred and protests, Doss stands with them, understands their pain. After all, he knows what it's like to be hated for your beliefs. In 1987, Dorothy dies. Doss's anchor, his love, his reason for fighting so hard to come home, gone. Friends worry he'll give up. Instead, he doubles down on service, speaks at schools, visits hospitals. At age 70, he's still climbing stairs to reach bedridden veterans, even though his own legs barely work. Just one more, Lord, let me help, just one more. You see the pattern? The prayer never stopped. The mission never ended, because Desmond Doss understood something most of us miss. Life isn't about what you can take, it's about what you can give. And there's always more to give. In nursing homes, he sits with dying veterans. Men who've kept their war stories locked inside for 40 years finally speak. They tell him about the friends they lost, the orders they followed, the things they did to survive. Doss doesn't judge, doesn't preach, just holds their hands and says, "You did what you had to do. You came home." That's what matters. One veteran, Robert Pierce, hasn't spoken about the war since 1945. His family doesn't even know he served. But with Doss, the words pour out. Stories of a young man forced to kill, of nightmares that never ended. When he finishes, Pierce expects condemnation from this famous pacifist. Instead, Doss embraces him. "Brother," he says, "we all served in our own way. Your sacrifice was different than mine, but no less valid." Can you understand that kind of grace? From a man who refused to kill, offering complete acceptance to those who did? At his funeral, something extraordinary happens. Veterans from multiple wars stand together. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Men who've never met unite in honoring someone who showed them a different way to be brave. As they lower his casket, one veteran starts reciting the medic's prayer. Others join in. Soon, hundreds of voices rise together. Lord, let me save just one more. But here's the question that haunts us. In a world that celebrates warriors, what do we do with a hero who refused to fight? In a culture that equates strength with violence, how do we honor someone whose power came from choosing not to use it? The answer lies in results. Desmond Doss saved 75 men on Hacksaw Ridge. But how many lives did those 75 save? How many families exist because of them? If you trace it forward, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, we're talking about thousands of people. Thousands of lives that exist because one man refused to see enemies, only brothers, in need of help. Think about your own life. When faced with opposition, do you fight or heal? When mocked for your beliefs, do you compromise or stand firm? When everyone else retreats, do you advance? Not with weapons, but with love. Not with violence, but with service. This is the paradox of Desmond Doss. The soldier who wouldn't fight became one of the greatest warriors in American history. The man everyone called weak displayed strength beyond comprehension. The conscientious objector showed us that the highest form of courage isn't taking lives, it's saving them. In military academies today, they study Hacksaw Ridge, not just as a battle but as a lesson in leadership. Officers learn that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is put down your weapon. That moral courage often requires more strength than physical courage. That one person refusing to compromise, their values can change the course of history, but Doss's influence extends beyond military strategy. Hospitals use his story to train medics and nurses. When exhaustion sets in, when the casualties seem endless, when you want to give up, remember Doss on that cliff. Just one more. Always room for just one more act of compassion. So here we are, you and I, sitting comfortably while somewhere in the world, someone faces their own Hacksaw Ridge. Maybe it's not a literal battlefield. Maybe it's a hospital ward, a classroom, a family in crisis, a community divided by hate. The cliff looks different, but the choice remains the same. Do you climb? Do you serve? Do you save? The voice that whispers, "You can't make a difference," that's the same voice that told Desmond Doss he was too weak, too small, too naive to matter. The voice that says, "Protect yourself first." That's the same voice that would have left 75 men to die on a ridge in Okinawa. Those voices lie. They've always lied, because here's the truth. Desmond Doss proved with his life. One person committed to love over fear can change everything. One person refusing to accept that's just how things are can rewrite history. One person saying, "I'll help," when everyone else says I can't, can start a revolution of compassion. You don't need a weapon to be a warrior. You don't need to take lives to be a hero. You just need to see suffering and choose to act. To hear cries for help and refuse to walk away. To face your own Hacksaw Ridge and say, "I'm going up." The medic who refused to leave his men wasn't superhuman. He was scared, exhausted, often overwhelmed. But he had something more powerful than strength or weapons or training. He had an unshakable conviction that every life matters, that love is stronger than hate, that service is the highest form of courage. And you have that same power, that same choice. Right now, someone in your life needs saving, not from bullets but from loneliness, not from grenades but from despair, not from enemy soldiers but from their own darkness. Will you be their Desmond Doss? Will you refuse to leave them behind? History remembers the generals, the strategists, the winners of great battles. But heaven remembers the ones who carried the wounded, the ones who chose love when hate was easier, the ones who saved instead of destroyed. Desmond Doss died believing he was just an ordinary man who did his duty. He was wrong. He was proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to compromise their values, when they choose service over safety, when they pray, "Lord, help me get just one more act of kindness, just one more moment of courage, just one more life saved." That's how you change the world. Not all at once, but one soul at a time. So what will you do with this story? Will you file it away as an interesting tale from a war long past? Or will you hear the call that echoes across time from a ridge in Okinawa? The call that says, someone needs you. Someone is counting on you. Someone's life depends on your courage. The cliff is waiting. The rope is in your hands. And somewhere above, a voice whispers the prayer that changed history. Just one more, Lord. Help me get just one more. Like the video, subscribe, and share. Your thoughts below. This channel is for those who believe history is made not only by armies, but by individual courage.